the Book of Boba Fett was this close to being so good. Maybe not as good as The Mandalorian, but still more of what the fans wanted. There's this general sense of disappointment after watching the season as a whole that I've seen online with reviewers and that I felt myself after watching the finale. It had all of the potential. It had a lot of the right pieces, but it just wasn't able to follow through. And we'll start with the obvious reason. That structure was funky. Between the flashbacks and the present day, kind of making the first couple episodes really lopsided in which ways they were telling the story and taking a while for it to even get started, and episodes 5 and 6 being just episodes of The Mandalorian, or in episode 6's case, just the Star Wars show. I did really love those 2 episodes. I wouldn't want them gone at all because they were fun Star Wars and I really enjoyed watching them, but Book of Boba Fett episodes, they kind of weren't. And it would have been really easy for episode 5, The Return of the Mandalorian, to play almost exactly the same way. But instead of having Mando, after he does that awesome scene in the beginning with the Darksaber and killing the people and collecting his bounty, instead of returning to just random crime dude with the head of the bounty, it's a member of the Pike Syndicate, perhaps the leader of the Pike Syndicate, and then we get to see that their operations are kind of like operating not just on Tatooine, but like on a broader scope, and that's why they're choosing to focus in on Tatooine. He says something like, oh, join us for dinner, like in the actual thing, but instead of just for no real reason, it's the Pike Syndicate guy telling Mando, hey, join us, I want to discuss more business opportunities in the future, with the Empire being out of the picture now and the New Republic not really doing a whole lot in the Outer Rim. This is our time to seize on these opportunities. And Mando, just like in the episode that we got, is like, no, really not interested. I just want the information you promised me about where the Mandalorian clan is. And the Pike Syndicate guy is like, you gotta stop living in the past, dude. This is a huge opportunity. Come on, man. Just seize it. We could really use your help dealing with that shit on Tatooine. And Mando's like, no, really? I can give this head to somebody else, even though that wouldn't change the fact that the man that you hired me to kill is dead, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But still, give me that information of where the Mando clan is. And the Pikes are like, alright, but you're missing out. Guess we'll have to hire some other guy, maybe Cad Bane. And then the episode plays out the same way. Obviously, the dialogue's not exactly that's. And boom, just like that, we're connected to the main villain of the season. There's a little bit more plot development in terms of the overarching plot. And also, it's a chance to even deeper connect to the theme of the episode and the theme of the series as a whole, reinvention. Boba reinvents himself throughout the flashback sequences and is struggling to, in the present era, reinvent himself from the bounty hunter that he was in the past, merciless, a cold-blooded killer, to a leader who cares about his people. Similarly, Mando is struggling with the burden of what the Darksaber that he won at the end of Mando Season 2 symbolizes, that he's now supposed to be the leader of the Mandalorian people who are scattered, broken, and spread throughout the galaxy, and he doesn't, at this point in time, he's not accepting that change, that reinvention of who he is. As soon as Grogu is out of his life, he goes right back into his old ways of life, where we saw him in the very first episode of The Mandalorian, doing bounties, killing scum, working for people who he doesn't care about, and going right back to his clan. But even still, he doesn't fully fit in anymore. He's kicked out of the clan because of the things that he did. This old life is not for him anymore, and it's pretty obvious when you watch the episode. Even him building the new ship is about, hey, in the past, you had the Razor Crest, which was great for bounty hunting because it had that, the carbon freezing where you could store bounties. But now, you just need a starfighter with that little hollowed out bubble for baby Yoda, because guess what? You're a dad now and a leader, and you're not a bounty hunter anymore. Hell, even Grogu and Luke are struggling with reinvention in this series. Grogu is struggling to let go of his attachment to Mando, and by the season finale, he chooses to just go back to his old way of life, and we immediately see how easy of a choice that is, how he's not pushing himself to grow. He gets off of the X-Wing at Tatooine, and he's immediately babied and coddled and given food, and doesn't have to worry about growing and confronting the past that Luke is showing him that's difficult, but owning up to his powers and using them responsibly as a Jedi. And similarly, this even sets up how Luke is struggling to reinvent the Jedi, even though he doesn't know it yet. He gives Grogu the choice. You have to choose between Mando, your attachment and your connection to the galaxy, and being a Jedi. This lightsaber, it's Yoda's lightsaber, which is really cool, but that doesn't mean anything to you. And we see later down the line, that is the exact kind of thinking that leads to Luke's temple being destroyed, to Ben Solo turning and becoming Kylo Ren and going off with Snoke, and why Luke is such a grumpy pants in The Last Jedi. This is the beginning of that. It's laying those foundations, but it's not really sticking. The pieces are there, but none of it sticks. This is literally laying the connective tissue between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. And Luke in particular, why he goes from the hero that we all grew up with to the grumpy pants of The Last Jedi. This is doing what Dave Filoni did with the Clone Wars to connect the prequels with the originals. Or it could be, it's supposed to be, but it's really hard to focus in and see it because the series itself is unfocused and the structure is everywhere, and it doesn't allow those moments to stick. That's the main problem with the whole Book of Boba Fett so far. All of it is like a little bit of setup and payoff with absolutely no build-up. It's just, oh, this exists, therefore that exists. Cool, that's a fact, and we can see it, but there's no emotional resonance. Boba Fett says he wants to learn to ride the Rancor in episode 3 or something, and then just like that, suddenly in the season finale, he's riding the Rancor. In the finale, the people of fREETOWN and the mod bikers of Mos Espa don't trust each other at first, and then throughout the fight, yeah, okay, we trust you now. Okay. Cad Bane is here, and he has a backstory with Boba, and Boba kills him. Okay. I mean, that in particular is cool if you know some of other Star Wars stuff, but as it was in the show, I was just like, yeah, alright, cool. Now imagine instead of Boba just learning to ride the Rancor, what if we got a scene of him struggling to do so? He gets bucked off the top of the Rancor and Danny Trejo laughs at him and is like, it'll take some time. And Boba is all like, and then Fennec Shan comes down and is like, hey, Mando's back, we gotta go up for a meeting. Literally a 20-second scene. Fits nice and easily into the show that they already had, but we didn't see it. And now, when he comes riding through the Rancor, it's still really cool to see, but there's no like, oh yeah, he did it! There's none of that element to it. It's just, oh yeah, he said he would, so he did. And the idea of different people coming together to fight a common enemy is nothing new, and certainly that fight definitely would build bonds, but like almost anything that's introduced in a finale of some sort, it just felt like, okay, sure, whatever, I don't care, this came out of nowhere. But imagine if in that meeting with Boba and Mando and Fennec Shand and the mods, when they're talking about, hey, we need an army, Mando, instead of just being like, I know somebody, could go like, hey, I'm gonna go to Mos Pelgo and I'm gonna recruit people there, I know them, I trust them, they're good fighters. And then the mods could be like, those desert womp rats, what good are they going to do us? And then that kind of puts more emphasis on the bartender's line in that episode that is already there. That's something like, oh, that's a city problem. That's not our problem. Boom, we see from both sides, no care, no trust, the opposite of Boba's themes and ideas now of like, hey, when you're a community and when you stick up for each other, then we're stronger together. And then we have the exact same stuff in the finale that we did, and now it's like, boom! Boba is a leader who is bringing these people together to fight an outsider, common enemy, the Pikes, who we saw are doing this kind of stuff on many different worlds and clearly don't care about Tatooine because we saw them do that deal with Mando earlier, and they're just often doing whatever everywhere to seize power for power's sake, which is not what Boba is about. And now, the themes are a lot clearer, and the moments that are already in the show are so much more focused. Cad Bane's existence is a parallel to Boba Fett's old way of life. A ruthless, codeless bounty hunter killer. And obviously, if Cad Bane were in this more, could be more of a chance for villain buildup, which this show was lacking. But also, even just where he's at, with what he's introduced, when he's introduced, cool, it was a great introduction, I loved it, I loved the shootout. But even when he shows up and confronts Boba for the first time in the beginning of the finale, if then we have a quick montage of little sequences of him as a kid warning his dad, Cad Bane taking him away, Cad Bane training him to shoot a blaster, Cad Bane forcing him to kill someone, Boba still a child. We see that could be 10, 15 seconds of a couple different shots. We see in this show the connection that they talk about in this show. We see the training, and we see Cad Bane forcing a child, Boba Fett, to murder people, and how that is just no longer what Boba wants. He doesn't want to be a killer, he wants to bring people together, he is rejecting that way of life. We see the reinvention farther because we're seeing the past Cad Bane, who's already in there, supposed to represent it. Now we see it. It's show, not tell. It's build up to the setup and before the payoff. It makes the payoff better, and it emphasizes the themes that they were already trying to put into the show. So yeah, that's why I think Boba Fett had all the right ideas, executed poorly. And as cool as Boba Fett as a character and a concept is, and a lot of people want to see him go absolutely nuts and blow through a platoon of stormtroopers like he did in Mandalorian, you can't really sustain a show on just those moments. And if we're going to dive deep into Boba Fett's character, which I think is a good thing to do, and it's about this reinvention, it's a great premise for building the connective tissue between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, which this era, the Mandalorian time, takes place between those two. It's a good way to do it. It's what Dave Filoni has already done with making the prequels better with what we've seen in the Clone Wars. But you gotta earn it, and this show either needed to be a bit more focused with the time that it did have, or maybe have a couple more episodes in there. But as it is, I think all of the pieces were there, but it just didn't resonate fully. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett Season 1. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and have a good week.